Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for your patience and thanks for joining us today on this webinar. My name is Jesus Mingarro and I lead the sales team here at Prosperon Networks. Just a bit about myself. I've been doing technical sales for well over 10 years now, 5 of them in Prosperon and 5 of them pretty much dedicated to SolarWinds. I've got here with me Mark Roberts, who is the Technical Director at Prosperon, and is also a SolarWinds MVP and my technical mentor. Mark, are you with us?
Good morning, Jess. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a compliment, by the way.
I took it that way. Thank you.
Just before we introduce the agenda, I've got a very exciting reminder to make to everyone. If you guys haven't received any communication whatsoever, I just want to make you aware that we are hosting a customer event, a SolarWinds Tech Day, and we're going to be joined by some of the SolarWinds geeks. That's going to happen next Monday, the 13th, at the Soho Hotel in London. Mark, are you coming to that?
I very much am looking forward to it. We got Patrick Hubbard coming along. We got a couple of other head geeks and some product managers. So a great opportunity for people to come down and voice all their issues and discussions all around SolarWinds.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds very, very exciting. So what we're going to talk today, what we're going to discuss are common SolarWinds alerting challenges. I dare to say that that's probably one of the most important issues or challenges that pretty much anyone that has SolarWinds faces. That is going to introduce to the power of SolarWinds customization, where Mark Roberts is going to show us practically. I was going to run through 3 examples that can enhance how you guys consume alerts or how alerts can work for you. And then we'll wrap it up just with a summary of what the masterclass, alerting masterclass is about. And to be honest, the session that Mark is going to be covering, or the examples that Mark is going to be covering, would be like a snippet of what the actual class is about. Would you agree, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully today's just going to be a bit of a taster in terms of the kind of things that you can do, possibly want to be looking at doing, all with a view to tighten up your alerting, because as we are going to be discussing, and I'm sure the reason for you guys being on this session today, alerting is the #1 pain point out of the box on any monitoring platform.
Absolutely. Okay, so just a reminder, today's webinar is interactive and is very, very important to count with your participation, so that we can keep this session as useful as possible and so that you can walk away with valuable insight. So for that, you're going to have 2 ways of making yourself heard. The first one is going to be by voting on the polls that we will be displaying throughout the session. We'll be asking you a couple of questions, and we kindly request that you submit your answers because they can help steer better the content that we display, and also the demos and the scenarios. The other way of interacting is going to be by asking direct questions, and you can type those on the chat box on your GoToWebinar panel. We're going to be monitoring this closely, so it will be either a case of answering them as they come, or just reviewing them at the end when we will have a questions and answer session. So let's start. Common SolarWinds alerting challenges. I'm pretty sure that you guys are going to be familiar with more than one of these. Too many alerts. I was asked once, Mark, how many are too many? And it was one of these questions that the answer is, it depends. So I don't know if you can expand on that. So.
Yeah, it is one of those variable things. Clearly, alerting is there to draw your attention to issues. We'll be discussing how many different ways that you can do that later on. But certainly when we do health checks, we look at the total number of outstanding alerts that are there, and also their age. If they've been sitting there for a week or more, and let's be fair, there are possibly some people here that have got alerts that have been active on their list for more than 6 months. In those situations, it's an obvious sign of alert fatigue. There's too much, there's not enough accuracy, and so from that point of view, what is right for your environment in terms of quantity is all dependent on how dynamic it is and the issues that are configured. So it needs to be manageable. It needs to be something that your teams can keep on top of, but also it's obviously there to do a job.
Absolutely, and I guess then the next 2 are going to be completely related to that as false positive, which is the gold standard. You know, you want to be alerted right on time, and you want to be alerted for something that is meaningful and something that is genuine. But in practical terms, I guess we discover more often than not that that's not really the case. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I kind of alluded to at the beginning. Out of the box, when you install Orion, do it very quickly, get populated, and the default alerts that are there are great. They're a great Kickstarter, but they are by no means the final destination point. They're too loose, they're not accurate enough, and so immediately you're going to be generating a lot of alerts which have no meaning to you, that are just kind of noise. And so from that point of view, it's very important to identify your true baseline. What scenarios do you need to look for? How can you ensure that the alerts that you get out are genuine? So when I get to my presentation, I'm going to show you a page that we have which can help people identify the noise that's coming out, and therefore how to then tune that down.
And I guess a primary reason for excessive noise is the multiple alerts for one incident. So you know a server is down, and yet you have 50 alerts for the same thing. What's the impact on that area?
Yeah, exactly. And we kind of call this alert storm. And so from a point of view where you get a number of alerts coming out for one true condition, that's just a situation where you get flooded, you can't see the wood for the trees, and so from what you need to be able to do is to identify the architecture of your environment, the structure, the topology. So Orion has some very good methods to allow you to put that structure in place, so that, and the obvious example here is that you're monitoring a remote site, so you've got 50 devices being monitored at that site. Well, if the router goes down, or the two routers that go down that provide your dual path connectivity to that site, Orion is going to alert for 52 devices going down. That's not the true situation. The true situation is that you've lost site connectivity. So we need to be able to cater for that, put the rules in place for that, so that you only get a small number of alerts telling you, I have a site gone down. I've got a dependency hierarchy that tells me out of my 20 servers in my server farm, we've got a core issue on our load balancer. These are the kind of things that we need to be looking for and putting into our definitions.
I guess that the main impact is going to the next one, which is I'm missing critical alerts, because you know, when you're receiving well over 500 to 1,000 alerts, it's unavoidable that you're going to miss out the ones that are actually meaningful, and they're going to be completely disguised among and between all the noise, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, and this is kind of where the whole best practice approach comes in. We've already talked about false positives. We've just talked about these multiple alerts for one incident situation. The work that we do on those to clean them down could mean that we start losing critical alerts. Well, I would rather receive 50 false positives if it means that I don't receive the alert that tells me my critical system's gone down. So it really is important that you understand your environment and the rules and the logic you put in place for alerting. Make sure you have that coverage, make sure you have that visibility of those scenarios, and all of this comes through into a clean output.
There's another implication though, because even when you recognize that SolarWinds has a powerful alerting engine, and when you put some cleverness or intelligence, and you start to put you know, groups and dependencies and thresholds that are perhaps more tailored, you still can end up with quite a fair amount of alert definitions that are completely different one from the other, and maintaining those is also quite challenging, right? So,
and this is where understanding how you can put together alerting definitions. Won't be naming any names in this as we kind of go through some things that we see out in the field, but there was a well-known one which I'll always bring up in training, where we had a customer with over 500 alert definitions, and for some customers that's sometimes required. The very big installations require that number of alerts. However, this was 500 alerts for node down, where they had gone through and created a singular, node down alert for every individual device.
I call that creativity. You cannot really come up with so many different definitions for the same thing. So.
I like your positive spin on that, Chef. That's the kind of person that you are. But the reality here is that there is an art form to an understanding of utilizing the capabilities. We often see alert definitions that can be consolidated just by tuning the alert configuration, utilizing custom properties, for example, utilizing groups. So rather than having lots and lots of alerts, say consolidating that down. Clearly the best practice approach that we promote is the fact that we have a smaller number of alert definitions as possible, but ensuring all of the other things that you see on the screen are catered for.
That's perfect. And then the final bit, which is also, I guess, a combination of the above, or it can go, or it can backfire, I guess, if the above is not clear. Once your alerting profile is spot on, perhaps you want to increase efficiency and by implementing automation, right? By not having to perhaps log tickets automatically, but letting SolarWinds do that for you. I guess that the main implication is that if you have too many, if they are false positive, if they are multiple for the same incident, and some of them are being missed, you know, that could be counterproductive rather than useful, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So alert automation is last on the list for a very good reason. We do not advocate that people go for alert automation until they've gone through the alert tuning process and also identified the alerts that truly fit the requirement for automating. Now automation can fit a number of things. It can be a case of automating issues and incidents into help desk platforms. Massive benefits for doing that. Orion is a monitoring platform. You have a help desk platform as a separate solution for a very good reason. They perform different functions. So Orion is the identifier and as the method to provide information that these issues are in place. The sooner you can get them into a ticketing platform, the better. You've got auditing, you've got automatic allocation, you've got intelligence engines within those platforms that allow you to be even more clever than you can do elsewhere. So it is those kind of things are very important to identify at what point you can do that automation into ticketing. We'll also, as we do the live demo, we'll see how automatic remediation can be accomplished. I'm going to be showing you how to use an automatic function to delete files to free up some space. So from this point of view, there are very quick wins. DevOps is a massive thing in play at the moment in our arena, and so from that point of view, we want to be able to identify solutions that can automate and make our lives easier. We all like that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I'm sure that, as I said, pretty much all of you get feel familiar with these areas. If you guys come across other type of scenarios that we have not covered, I'd be delighted to understand what these are. And in order to move forward, I'm going to ask you for some interaction. If you guys can vote, let me launch the poll. So what's your biggest SolarWinds alerting challenge? There are a few them. Too many alerts, false positive, well, practically the ones that we've covered. Alert management, missed critical alert, and multiple alerts for one incident. Let's just give them a few more seconds, and then we can collect the participation.
Just while you're voting, if there anybody that has other things that they find as their biggest challenge outside of that list, put them in as a question. I'm more than happy to discuss that towards the end of the session.
That's what I tried to say in Spanglish, so obviously didn't make any sense. So. Okay, so I think pretty much everyone has voted. I'm going to close this and share.
Well, there's a surprise.
Yeah, so 69% too many alerts, 44 false positive, 44 as well missed critical alerting, and around 31% have problems with alert management. Hopefully they won't be with 500 for the same thing. And finally, you get around 20% that tend to receive multiple alerts for one incident. You said that that's alerting a storm, correct?
Yeah. We kind of call that an alert storm.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do, Mark, is I'm going to pass the baton over to you, and
thank you.
You can walk us through the practical side of this webinar. So,
okay. So hopefully everyone can see our website as the information on the screen. So I just wanted to kind of draw your attention. So what I'm going to cover today is a kind of visual presentation on some recent blog posts that we've put up. what we're doing is creating a kind of blog bite series, and so this is going to be a series of technical tips and tricks and how-tos and best practicey kind of things. We've got today we're concentrating on the alerting, and so on our website under Insights, Network Management, we have these three issues in place. And so what you can see on the screen at the moment is our first blog bite. So I'm going to be going through this in visual form. After the event, as an email, we'll be sending out the links to this if you want to go to them directly. Okay, so let's have a look at the first thing. So what we have here is a definition of three alerts. We're going to be looking at how we can use the alerting engine in Orion to do some automation, to allow us to be more hands-off and let things go on their own regard, and also to provide enriched information. So the first one I'm going to cover here actually is this Cisco High CPU. Now, for those of you with the Server and Application Monitoring module, for example, you're probably familiar, and if you're not, absolutely have a look at it. It's a very, very useful alert. There is an alert provided out of the box, which when a high CPU is detected on a server, Server and Application Monitor will go off and grab an immediate, what is the current top 10 processes by CPU load, and they'll inject that into the alert definition. So when you receive that email or that ticket, you have immediate information to know at the point of high CPU load, these were the reasons for that high levels. If you're saying that you've got your SQL Server running at 99% CPU load, immediately you know you've got that as your problem. For network devices, we have also this capability as well. So for example, here I'm going to show you through this high CPU for Cisco. So what I want to do first of all is just kind of show you visually that we have, so just reconnect everything. So let me just log in, lost that session. So there is a very simple command, and for those of you that are network engineers, you may well have used this in the past. And so here we have a show process CPU. Now, our device here in our lab doesn't support the sorted command, but we do advocate that you add on sorted on the end of this, because what it will then do is put all of your processes that are running on that Cisco device to the top, so you can see them in a more ordered fashion. Now, if you are a network admin and you see that you've got very high CPU load on a device, one of the things that you may well be doing is running this command to get this understanding. What we're talking about in this session is automating this. So if I just edit this alert here, what you will see on our trigger condition is that we are simply looking for high CPU load. Now, please bear in mind that this has obviously been built for this webinar. Typically, this CPU load here will not be based just on purely on CPU load. It would be CPU load threshold is equal to critical is yes. But we've just done this to enforce it so we get some true values out rather than just trusting our little box. Now, the rest of the definition here is validation. We're making sure that we've got a Cisco device that's got iOS. We're making sure the device is not down. And in this case, I'm just doing this on a specific single node. That rule would not be in place for you. And actually, you may have, and you're likely to have, this value in here. Having the ability on high threshold alerts, such as CPU, such as traffic, is important because you don't want to have lots of flapping going on. And this is one of the techniques with regards your alert generation to control it. Having a situation where the condition must exist for more than X number of minutes allows you to prevent that situation occurring. So we'll only get one alert in a smaller time frame rather than 20 alerts just because it's bouncing around the threshold. Now I'm going to disable that obviously because I want to trigger mine immediately. So we have a definition here. Under the trigger actions, we are utilizing two actions. Our first action here we are executing a script. And then we're waiting a minute, because what that script has been built to do is to inject the contents of that output into an email variable. So let's go and have a look at the script first. And so here we have execute an NCM script, and there is our command. Now, as I say, typically for you guys out there with your Cisco devices, you're going to add that value. So this script is going to get executed against the IP address that we define as a variable, and so therefore the device or the devices that are experiencing high CPU load, this will dynamically put the IP address within that. Following that, the email, I'm just going to send this to myself as a demonstration, and what we have in here, we have a formatted email. We've got some textual information regarding what the issue is. We've got some device information, and what I've got here is the actual output of that content. So you can see that I'm using the variable from the alerting notes field. Just these things at the bottom, top tip. Always include the alert name variable in your alerts. Again, you may well have experienced this, whereby you've got alerts coming out of Orion, and you're kind of trying to understand why. You need to be able to correlate this to the definition. So this will allow you to make sure you're actually editing the same alert that's generating that output. Okay, so I'm going to just actually show you the summary page, just to make sure that we've got everything right. So we've got our definition, we've got our trigger condition, we've got our alerts, and down in the right-hand corner, before you ever submit any changes to alerts, please take your time to look at this and confirm that the number of alerts that are going to fire immediately that you enable this is expected. If it's not, and we've seen customers that when we're doing installations get the logic wrong, you'll see several hundred there. You do not want to be generating several hundred. So this could be an indication that you've got your alert logic incorrect. So I don't want to make any changes to that. What I do want to do is just enable it. And what we shall see in a short time is our alerts. So we're just going to keep an eye on this. And I love live demos. Let's see when it comes in. There we go. Just a little bit of patience, Mark. Okay, so you can see that our alert has now triggered. You can see the time. And if I go into that alert detail page, what we can see is our note field. So this is our output. Now this has not been formatted because of the way that this is structured. But what I'm going to be doing now is just bringing it up on the screen is the email structure. So the shortest time that we have available is 1 minute for the delay. Now, the reason we had those two alert definitions, the script was going off and doing the data collection from our device, collecting this information. The script is also then injecting that content in, and there's a 1 minute delay on that coming through. So let's just have a look at that message as soon as it comes through. And here we go. I'm just going to bring this onto the screen. So now, if you remember the structure that we had a textual line showing the issue, we had the device information. Now, typically, I'll be putting more information on here. I'll be putting custom property information, operational owner, the location, various other things. But here is the reason that we run this alert. This now is giving us our formatted display that will allow us to identify what process is consuming the CPU utilization. Okay. So hopefully in terms of that alert, you can identify the benefit of using automation within the capabilities to extend the functionality that you have in the output to be more accurate.
Especially when you don't really pay attention, right? Imagine that you receive this sort of alert at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're not really there. You have to go back and then you have to do troubleshooting. You don't have any context whatsoever. You just know that the CPU was high and that's pretty much it, right? So.
Yeah, and this kind of comes back to this whole advocation of enriching output. If you look at the default alerts in Orion, I'd say they're very good, but it doesn't have enriched information. It will tell you node down, node name is equal to down. Well, great, but if you know that that node is at this location, it's in this rack, it's managed by this team and this person, that you've got a support contract with this company, if you've got all of that information in that alert output, clearly you can be much more informed, especially if you're receiving that alert at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we've done here is we've enriched it with live collected data.
Absolutely. Richard asked a question though, and is, can the show command result be formatted better on the alert page? It does look a bit cluttered, to be honest. So.
Yes, so on the default page that we have here, so this is the one that you're asking about. So in this screen here, no, it can't at the moment, but what we can do with this is to show this on another page. So what I'd be tending to do would be to put this on the node details page, so we can show the last alert details, and then yes, we have the ability to override the format and make it a much clearer presentation. So in terms of this demonstration, I kept it quite simple.
Okay, perfect. Hope that answers the question, Rich.
Okay, so let me just turn that one off, and we're going to go across to our next one. Okay, so this is an example of using one of the actions to update a custom property. Now, I will say at the beginning, this is not necessarily something you're going to put in if you've got a lot of remote sites, because what you would need to do is create an alert definition for each site. But for customers that have maybe up to 20 sites, keeping custom properties up to date and having good quality data is an essential part of a good installation of Orion. I've said that slowly, I've said that clearly. I cannot stress the importance enough. Anyone that I've worked with, anyone that I've engaged with on site and done work for, and my engineers will all be receiving this I won't say lecture, but I think you'll understand where I'm coming from and how important I feel this is. Custom properties are the heart and soul of a good platform of Orion. And so we want to make sure the quality of the data that's put in them is good. So what we have in terms of this is utilizing the alerting engine to keep that data up to date and good quality. And actually, before I move on, one of the things that we can do with that is automate that. So if any of you have got CMDBs, and your CMDBs are that kind of authoritative data source for information on your devices, that is a great thing to be using and injecting automatically into Orion. We can leverage the Orion API to achieve that. But in terms of what we're doing here, we're seeing that we've got an alert. We're updating a site value based on an IP address. Now, clearly, an IP address in this example is a good option where we can say, okay, I know that 192.168.25 dot and 10 dot are all devices that are going to be at my data center or my headquarters. And so from this, you can use the logic condition statement. And so this is starting with, it could be contains, it could be whatever is appropriate to fit this out. So from this point of view, any of those two IP addresses that appear in a node under management, we are then going to use that as a foundation. Now I've got this OR statement down here. You can see that in this case I've just got a singular statement. So actually in reality I would normally put that up here because I don't need it to be as an OR statement. But what I'm going to do here is show you that we can drag these things around, but also that we can build more complex structures. So we've got our OR statements, we've got our AND statements, we've got our reverse of those, and so we can be very, very accurate and granular in the alert definitions that we put in place. Now what I'm actually going to do here is change this, and I just want to bulk update all of my devices that equal Hove. So if I just cut across to my custom property editor, let's just refresh this page. And what you'll see here is that we've got a bunch of custom properties under site, and I want to update all of my devices that are currently set to Hove to be a Worthing address. So my logic has just been updated to look for that, and say this is just an example of how to utilize this platform, not necessarily a real world one at the bottom here. And under the actions, you will see that I've got action here that I can utilize to change the custom property to a new value. Now, the thing that you will notice here is that I've got two drop-downs. Well, the first drop-down is always going to be the case. It's going to list out all of my custom properties. These are good examples of common custom properties that we will put in place for customers. Really gives you the ability, as I say, to enrich your output from your alerting engine, and also enrich the display in terms of Orion. And the second drop down here is purely because the custom property that we've defined is a pre-selected list. And so from that point of view, it makes sure that people don't misspell Worthing or Arundel or anything like that. And so we've got, again, data quality assurance. So I'm going to change all of my devices from Hove and set them to Worthing in this case. So I'm going to change that. And we've also got an action here that's going to write an event log for us just to make it clearer. I don't need a reset action. Yep, so certainly for a lot of alerts, you will create a reset condition and a reset action. In terms of this is not required, but this could be your confirmation that a device has come back up, or a service is now operating within correct parameters again. Again, we're going to always come to this summary page, just review that I've got all my logic right, and here's my confirmation that 31 objects are going to get updated based on this value. So let's just submit that, and let's enable that alert. And now when I come and refresh this page, you will see when I change this back to site, you can see now that all of my devices are now not showing as Hove, that they've all been put into my Worthing group.
And the actual custom property Hove has disappeared, correct? So it's no longer there.
Yeah, just purely because my alert definition meant that all of the devices that were previously assigned Hove, because they had the same IP addresses that I had defined, those two entries, they are a full match. So it all comes down to that alert logic, which is why when you're doing alert analysis, when you're reviewing, understanding how your alertings have been built is an essential process in that.
This is so powerful, it opens so many possibilities, because I guess it's not just the site or the IP address, right? Could be applications on servers, could be pretty much anything.
Yeah. So as I say, in this example, we've used a very clear example of using an IP address because we know that they're going to be associated to regions or sites or business units or whatever, and so we're using that to update a geographic location. But certainly this could be leveraged for many, many other purposes, yeah. Okay, so there's two of our little blog bites covered. And the last one, and probably one which is a good example of automation, is deleting some folders on a server. So we've got here an example. Now, I've done this as a kind of common real world, and we do put this in place for customers that can see the benefit of it. So if I just edit this while I'm talking about the kind of background that we've got here. And so what we're talking about doing here is deleting folders, or the contents of folders, should I say, on endpoint servers in a safe and secure manner, because when their volume utilization hits certain limits, we know we're going to get degradation. So in terms of a C drive, when C runs out, and particularly if paging is being located on that volume, performance can be severely affected. We could also be in a situation where if it's got absolutely no space on there and it's under high stress because of that, that we have problems logging in and dealing with things. So this is an alert that's there to automate some cleaning and some cleansing. And so we are utilizing, in this case, a PowerShell script. And that PowerShell script has got a number of bits of logic in there. So if I just open my text editor here, and so I'm not going to dissect the logic and the structure and the syntax in this PowerShell script, but what you can see is that we are receiving three parameters. We're receiving the computer, we are referencing a CSV file in this case. We could hard code it. This is just our preferred way of doing things. So this CSV file has a structure where we are providing three parameters. We're providing a folder, we're providing an age, so in this case 0, delete all of them, but we could say only files older than 14 days. And then we've got an exclusion list, and we're saying actually don't delete files with this file extension. And we can put as many rows in here as we want to. So for this one, I'm going to use the temp, but typically you're going to put your Windows temp folders, whether this is profile temp folders, IIS temp folders. This could be log file locations. If you've got an application that you know is generating a lot of log files and can fill up a drive very quickly, you can utilize it to automatically cleanse down, or indeed do even more things. You could use this as a log rotation and zip up files, delete recycle bins. All these kind of things are absolutely possible. So we've got some logic in here that we're making sure that the folder exists, that we are able to connect to this and parse the CSV file. We are then iterating through, looking for all the devices, the files, and then we are going to delete the files. So here we have the activity to delete the files. And then at the bottom here, what we're actually then doing is using the Orion API to update a value, in this case an alert value, and so from that we are then injecting the number of files and the total volume of space that's been cleansed by this activity. So two key things that are going on here. We're deleting files based on some logic structure, and we're then updating Orion via its API to enrich again the information in the alerting output. So let's go and have a look at the alert definition, see how this all comes together. So under our trigger condition, again, this is not a real world situation. This is a bit of a false one. You wouldn't have caption is equal. I'm just keeping this to a singular test volume, but typically you would be doing this. Yeah, so you would be doing that kind of situation because you want to make sure that only C volumes are included, perhaps, in your volume analysis. We're making sure this is a fixed disk, so a true volume, and then we've got our logic that says our percentage used. Now, I'm only doing percent used greater than 10% in this example. This is very much where you would probably be creating, as we've got here, a custom property that is over the critical value. So you may have a custom property value that says 98%, because on a volume with that's 500 gig, the percentage value on that would be different from if you've got 2 terabytes or if you've got 100 meg or something. So each volume can have its own trigger threshold. So typically, as I say, we would be using the threshold. Actually, there's a double checker. The threshold has been exceeded. And so here, if we just do, it's gone. I was looking for that, so let's just go back and put it in. So, use space. Oh, where's my? I can't see it. There we go. So I'm going to do this as 10% and go on to my trigger actions. And so here I've got my alert action. If we just edit this, you can see that we are using the external program execution. So if I just take this content out and just reuse my notepad. So this is the definition. So we are referencing the PowerShell command line. This value may be different on your platform, be aware. We've set an execution policy so it can execute without permission issues. Again, you may have different variables for your environment. And then we're passing some parameters of command. So we're executing this script. So again, your location may well be different. We're passing the computer name, and here we are providing the DNS name from Orion for the device that's being affected by this volume usage. We're providing the path to that CSV file, and then we're providing an alert object ID. So this is actually the alert ID that the script will then use to update that value back into Orion so we get that visibility. Again, I would typically be having additional alerts on here that would send an email. And so if I just click cancel and go back to my enable screen and just enable this, what we should see is these are my remote files, and you can see that those files have just been deleted.
Like magic.
And again, if I refresh my alert list, all things being well, we can see our alert has fired. You can see that the volume on that server. And if I go into the alert details page, you can now see that in this case, a total of 8 files were deleted, freeing up a total of 374 megabytes of space. Okay, so that kind of concludes the kind of live demonstration here. Hopefully, as I say, with all of those three, you can see how automation, you can see how some alert configurations can really help you in your day-to-day workload.
Lee asked before if we were going to share all those scripts with you guys, and the answer is yes. You know, to everyone that registered to the webinar, you will receive an email with links to download the 3 scripts so that you can put them in place. So absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely. So just to reiterate, on our website under Network Management, in these 3 examples anyway, we've got our 3 blog posts. So they are going to give you all of the details of what we've just discussed on this webinar, and all of them include the ability to download those files. And so, yeah, you've got all of that capability to immediately get up and running. And hopefully, as I say, with the information that we've provided, it's a good starter for you to kind of utilize this as it is, but also take it forward and achieve other things with that.
Another question that we have, perhaps more for troubleshooting when you are implementing this script. Florent asked, in case of having an issue with executing this script, where will appear the error? So will you have like a log that tells you this wasn't successful, or the parameters that you're passing are incorrect, or it would be just a case of the files won't be deleted or the script won't be executed?
I just realized I was on mute. So there's a couple of aspects to that question here. So we have methods in the alerting to identify that there were some, maybe some failures. So the script if it failed to execute properly in one of the log files on Orion, we would be able to get visibility of that occurring. We would be able to see from that maybe there was some logic that was causing problems or whatever. So yes, you do have the ability to get an understanding of why alerts may fail to fire correctly and complete all of their actions.
Perfect. Brilliant. So, Mark, can I have presented rights again, please?
Yep, I'm going to check.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, after those 3 examples that you showed us, we're going to have a poll, if I am able to pass this slide. Perhaps not. Ah, perfect. So, just a quick question there. Where is it? So will you be implementing some of these alerts into your own environment, or scripts rather? If you come, oh wow, that's 100% yes. I think it was useful then so far.
That's always a good sign we've done something right.
6% of no. Shame on you. I think there are more people voting now, so I think we can close the poll just for you guys to be aware of the results. The majority of you will potentially be putting the results. I'll be very, very interested in understanding why you are not going to be putting these alerts. Is it because they are not really relevant to your environment? You know, it would be useful to understand. There's another question, Mark, before we move on. Can the show command result be formatted? Oh no, that's sorry. I asked that question. That was from Richard at the beginning. Okay, perfect. Yep. To continue, we're gonna have a very, very brief summary of what the masterclass is. And to be honest, you know, more often than not, we follow up with customers, and you tend to ask the question is, you know, how is SolarWinds working for you? And one of a typical response that made me cringe is, it does what it says on the tin. And you say, well, okay, you know, none of the stuff that we've actually discussed is mentioned on the tin, yet if you're avoiding, perhaps considering this kind of advanced features in SolarWinds, you're really, really missing out. And one of the major implications, obviously, is going to be the challenges that we mentioned before, is, you know, how many alerts you have, how meaningful they are they really being counterproductive for your environment? So that's something that we come across quite often. So I guess that's a way of overcoming that issue. By all means, is implementing the snippets or the alerts definition that Mark showed us. If you guys want to go beyond that point, we'll probably recommend that you guys join us on one of the alerting masterclass courses that we offer. What are the main things, I guess, that we cover in these courses? So, for example, Orion alerting engine principles. Mark, what would that be? What would that give to users joining that sort of training?
Yeah, so we can start obviously on the foundations. Now, the masterclass is certainly there for advanced users, so they tend to come along with a good understanding of how the alerting engine works, the key settings, the features, the capabilities, but we just cover some of the foundations of that to ensure that everyone is fully up to speed, and discuss some of the things we've gone through today. The fact that the alerting engine is not there just to send emails. Again, one of the big things that we like to drive through is that we can do far more capabilities, and that there is the capabilities of putting that in place on the actions, on the definitions, and all of those features.
Perfect sense. And alert generation analysis, I guess, is trying to understand, you know, the why and how alerting is being generated, and then obviously apply some sort of tuning to ensure that you're receiving the correct levels, right, and content of alerts.
Yeah, I don't know how we're doing for time, but I could show an example of our alert analysis page that we've built. Understanding why you're alerting is the first thing to go through, to then understand what you then need to do to tune it. And so we have a number of reports. Oh, great. So let me just do that.
Yeah, it's probably better you to show you. It's going to be way more meaningful.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen there.
We can indeed.
Okay, so from this point of view, here we've got a number of pages. Okay, so just very quickly, I'm just going to tune out some testing we were doing. And so on these alerts, here you can see that we've got a visibility of which are generating the most number of alerts. So for example, on the 26th last week, one of our servers generated the most number of alerts. We've got them for definitions, so which alerts are generating the most. So in this case, one of our web performance monitor alerts is generating 46 alerts in a single day. Okay, so you can see clearly as we look through this, this is a consistent thing. We're generating a large number each day. So from our point of view, we will want to absolutely understand why. Is it the fact that the web performance monitor is giving us visibility of poor performance on our website that we're monitoring, or websites, or do we need to tune the alerts? Well, first of all, we've got an understanding that we've got an alert that's generating a lot. Now we can start tuning it and identifying the reason for that. And similar kind of thing on the right-hand side, where we can identify what SAM templates are generating the most. So clearly we have a particular mailbox here which is generating a lot of alerts. From that point of view, this is one of our sample alert definitions. I know that we can go and fix that. I can speak to my Exchange admin and he can come along and fix that mailbox, remount it, and all of those alerts suddenly disappear.
But this is the thing. I mean, to be honest, I appreciate that for many of you, managing SolarWinds is not the only task that you have to do, or you don't have that luxury. You're going to be managing SolarWinds along with other 20 tools. So this sort of knowledge or visibility is going to help you understand much better your environment, hopefully reducing not just the time that you have to spend managing SolarWinds, but also the time that you have to spend troubleshooting and making sense of whatever SolarWinds is throwing at you from an alerting perspective.
Yeah. Exactly. So we were looking at charts there. I've just flipped across to one of the table outputs. So this one's identifying and kind of alludes to one of the questions that we had with errors, I think, from Florent, in how do we identify alerts that are failing to do their job. In this case, we've got alerts which are failing to send their email. Well, I know this in this case, sending their email. So this, again, is giving that critical insight.
Absolutely. Other kind of area that we cover on the alerting masterclass, advanced alerting, and obviously it's just, I guess, understanding that there are several principles that can be applied that can reduce or get the noise level and to a minimum, or to at least a consistent level that is actually useful for you. Let me see. Yep. Do you get my screen again? Can you see my screen, Mark? Yeah.
I can indeed. Yep. Excellent.
Finally, almost finally, the best alert actions. We pretty much proved in here that an alert is not an email, or doesn't necessarily has to be only an email. There's many possibilities within Orion that can enhance and enrich your experience and how you use the tool, and make you way more proactive, which again is kind of the golden standard that anyone investing in a monitoring tool is trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, and again, I said it before, in the fact that a lot of customers that we see are literally just using email, which for a lot of environments is fine, but the really advanced and the really capable environments are disseminating that into many different methods. So whether it's the fact that if you're running Slack, for example, and you are pushing alerts into your Slack channel, that you're doing automation. We've seen today lots of different automation. We're sending it to the ticketing system. This level of capability exists, and therefore being able to take advantage of that to improve your visibility, your understanding, but also your workflow as this information comes out. Now, the quicker you can get things done, the quicker that engineer at 3 o'clock in the morning can determine, does he get out of bed and go in and fix an issue, or does he actually not get that alert in the first place? Which is the correct one, my point had. Yeah, these are all things that absolutely are going to be ideas of success.
Perfect. So, you know, it is pretty much a balance between you guys understanding what are the full capabilities of the tool, and as I said, most of this is not going to be on the data sheet. You know, it's something that perhaps you want to challenge us and say, well, can I actually do this? And this is my scenario. Do you think that we could do something? I'm pretty sure that we can come up with ideas that can fit your requirements. And one of them is, by all means, raising your awareness of the tool's capabilities. So, Mark, I'm very conscious of the time. We literally have a minute. So unless that there are any more questions, which I don't think there's anyone coming, I just want to remind everyone about the event that we're having on Monday, the 13th of November. It'll be great to see you guys there. It'll be great fun, and I'm sure that you guys can, you know, get valuable insight from the SolarWinds head geeks. So I'm looking forward to see you there. If there are no more questions, Mark, thank you very much for your time today. And I think we can probably close the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I hope you find it useful. And we will be sending those scripts, and hopefully you can put them in place. Give us some feedback if you can. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Bye-bye now.